Right, super quick one today. After my sound comparison video between the Neo and the Mini 4 Pro last week, I had a fair few people get in touch and ask about the actual picture and video quality and whether I thought it was good enough. And in truth, I've got to admit that when I was reviewing the very first video I shot with the Neo, I did kind of ask myself, am I really that pink? Or is the camera just messing me around a little bit? But look, I will be honest, I kind of hesitated on making this video because the Neo is marketed as a super cheap selfie drone, a little lightweight beginner drone. So is it fair to compare, what is it, £170 drone with a £600 drone with a far better camera? But look, much like the sound comparison video last week, comparing pictures is not about proving a point or showing a clear winner, but to me it's more about showing the quality of the picture and video achieved and comparing it to a simple known benchmark, if you like, of a different popular model, the Mini 4 Pro. If we take a look at the camera specs, then the Neo has got a small 1/2-inch sensor that is pumping out the pictures, certainly one of the smaller sensors in any DJI drone. But keep in mind, it's larger than the forward selfie camera sensor on my Samsung S22 Ultra. And that has kept me more than happy for a year or two. So it's not like a small sensor is automatically going to produce bad results. Now compare with the Mini 4 Pro's camera specs. It's got the larger 1/1.3-inch 12 megapixel sensor with a quad Bayer overlay to generate up to 48 megapixel stills. So of course you'd expect this to pump out better results, and of course it does. But what I wanted to find out is how good or bad the Neo's pictures are compared to the Mini 4 Pro's. So we put the Mini 4 Pro and the Neo back up in the air again and took some similar photos and video, all with the out-of-the-box auto settings. And this is what we found. Now, take a look at this first one. You can say I am the perfect reason to avoid selfies. But look at what the Neo is specifically designed to do. And is it actually producing that? To me, yeah, the results are not that bad at all. You get a pretty good colour and resolution despite the much smaller 1/2-inch sensor. And the results really are pretty good, I think, especially if you're posting this on Instagram and it's only going to be viewed on phones. Compare with a similar shot taken from the Mini 4 Pro and you're thinking, well, actually, yeah, things are pretty good and pretty comparable. Further up high, if you take a wider picture of the open landscape, then again, to me, the results are not that bad. Certainly the Neo's picture does look a little bit less colourful and a little bit grayer, but if you give it a quick tweak and up the contrast and up the saturation in a little bit of editing, you end up with results that I think are pretty similar. And coming down to earth, we have a lower light situation in the shady ferns part of the garden. And again, the Neo puts out a very reasonable result when compared with the Mini 4 Pro. And you can see the ferns in the background. And to me, the colour and contrast is not that bad at all. And final little look at the pups after both drones had landed. Again, you've got the bright bits of sky behind them shining through. So a slightly difficult high contrast picture. And to me, at first glance, the results do look pretty good and pretty comparable. So where does that leave us now? Well, I just mentioned first glance, and I think whilst the Neo is definitely pumping out adequate pictures and video, especially for its price, to me, it is really just borderline acceptable, and nowhere is that more apparent than if you actually have to crop a photo slightly. Because if you do zoom in a little in order to crop, then that is where you're going to start seeing differences appear all too clearly. Now let's zoom in on this photo of Molly, and as soon as you get close up, you can see the picture resolution breaking down quite quickly on the Neo picture. It's even more apparent with the Antarctic ferns in the shady part of the garden. Zooming into the fern with the Mini 4 Pro's picture, you see the fronds of the fern stay pretty sharp, even when zooming right in quite closely. Now compare that to the fern structure completely breaking down pretty quickly when you try and zoom in to the Neo's picture. But really, you have to ask yourself, what is the point in pixel peeping pictures when you know the cameras are pretty incomparable? So for me, the purpose of this whole exercise was just to prove that the little Neo can pump out video and pictures that I can at least make use of, reasonable use of, and enjoy. And I think that's been more than proved here, to be honest. I've heard a few people complain that the Neo could have had a better camera and they'd have been happy to pay a little bit more money for it. Well, you've got to remember that the Neo was launched and marketed as very much a super cheap beginner drone. And that's exactly what it is. That said, DJI have got pretty good form, haven't they, for releasing S and Pro versions of a particular model some 6 to 12 months later. So I'm kind of guessing next year you may well hear or see a Neo 2 or a Neo S with a bigger camera. I don't know. But look, until then, you need to ask yourself, is it good enough for what you want out of it? And if it is, then there you are. So look, there you go. Hopefully a little bit helpful for you to see the actual end results of this, still think, a brilliant beginner drone. Thumb me up as ever if you found this helpful, help the video along. Until next time, have fun. Happy flying.